The Deliberate Leaders podcast with emerging talent interviews professionals under the age of 40 who I deem as leadership badasses. My name is Anna Thiele, and I am the host for this podcast and the leadership coach here at Deliberate Directions. Let me introduce to you this week's talent. Hi, John Michael. Welcome to the Deliberate Leaders podcast.
Thanks for having me.
First question, I heard a little bit about your past. You started entrepreneur spirit at 16. How did you manage having all of the dreams in the world, but only having 16 years of life experience?
Yeah, I think certainly at that time, I think that people were just impressed that I was a 16-year-old who wanted to do something on my own, right? So the bar was pretty low. Just the fact that I was being a responsible teenager, I think just impressed some people, regardless of how good, the quality of our detailing or the prices or anything of that sort. But certainly as I got older and then, started my first car wash when I was, it's open when I was 25, that certainly, the kind of the paradigm shifted a little bit, because I'm a 25-year-old who is leading, in some cases, people twice my age, and I have no experience. I had no idea what I was doing. So certainly there was some challenges I had to face there. And quite interestingly, a lot of the lessons, some of the most impactful lessons that I learned as a leader were certainly during that time. I compensated for my lack of leadership ability by hard work. Like I came into, when I opened my first wash, honestly, a little too cocky. I was in high school, I was junior class president, and I was senior class, or then I was student body president. My fraternity, I was president a couple of times and held leadership positions. I was president of a recycling club, started my own business when I was 16. I've been a manager and a leader all of high school and college. And so I kind of thought I had things figured out. Little did I know I did not, and I knew nothing. And despite having a fancy degree, they never teach you anything on how to be a leader, which is comical. But I'm already digressing. You're going to have to keep me accountable there.
Okay.
The point I was trying to make was, when I first opened the first wash, I knew I could work hard. So when I opened my first one, I had no idea how to train, hold people accountable, or lead. So when we opened, I worked 28 days straight. My shortest day was 12 hours. So I was doing 120-hour weeks. And really for the first several years, I was doing 80-plus-hour weeks. And yes, I really enjoyed the success that came from that. But more often than not, those long hours were really just a symptom of my inability to lead and to manage and to hold accountable. So it's certainly the journey I started on is much different than it is now, thankfully.
Thankfully.
Yeah.
Yes. Before we jump into now future growth, what you're looking forward to, I'm curious, in that time where you didn't know how to be a leader, but you had to lead other people, what was their response to you?
I certainly got, I can remember a handful of times just seeing you're just a little kid, you don't know what you're doing. When I was trying to coach somebody, or doing my best to try and lead them. But really, those things were so few and far between. Pretty early on, I developed our why as a company, and that was pretty monumental for my ability to get people excited and engaged with what we were trying to do. We're working at a car wash, right? So it's not like people come to us thinking that we're going to change the world. But my hope as a leader was that I could help them understand that we weren't just a car wash. We are a professional organization focused on people's growth, and we want to provide an exceptional service and experience for our guests, unlike any other wash out there. And changing it to that and helping people understand it from that perspective totally changed the game. And people stopped looking at me like a 25-year-old who didn't know what they were doing.
Yes. Okay. So all the past, what is the next opportunity for growth?
Personally or professionally, or both?
Whatever's more prevalent at this current moment.
That's fair. I think one of the biggest things we're focused on is So now, you've heard about the young John Michael. Now I'm 32, and I have two businesses, over 100 employees, and soon to be 8 locations. I've totally had to transform my leadership style every single year since we've opened, and figure out work-life balance and all those things. I have a long road ahead of me to becoming an exceptional leader, but I think my greatest area of opportunity for growth is trying to refine, being able to reinvent my leadership style to better accommodate the environment I'm in. We went from 45 employees last December to now over 100 in 9 months, 10 months. Now have some pretty incredibly sophisticated people that are around us to help manage that. And now I'm having to change my leadership style to help them be successful and inspired. So that's definitely at the forefront of my mind every day, is how can I show up best for them?
As a leader facing these problems, what are 2 to 3 attributes that you assign to them?
To being a good leader?
Mm-hmm. Or just, yeah, a good. We'll start with good.
Sorry, to a leader. I was trying to think of this in the context of like our company and what we push now, because this is inherently kind of like an embodiment of my personal beliefs. And for us, we really have tried to model ourselves after our values. And we found that when we really focus on value alignment, we start to see much greater success, much better engagement, and people genuinely enjoy what they're doing, and the people around them so much more. So for Bluebird, that's pursue excellence, serve with humility, be accountable, and deliver smiles. So that was step one, is I think if a leader can hit those things, they're in great shape. But I think the next level of that is, once you can create either a system, a structure, or an environment where you hire, fire, train, and reward using those values, and as a leader you stick to that, whether or not that's company policy or not, I think that's when you really start to become a really true leader. So yeah, I think that's where I feel about that.
When you can live out the values, is that what you're meaning?
Yes, I'm sorry. Yeah, when you can, identifying values is a whole other thing, which I highly recommend people spending the time to do personally and professionally. But if you can identify and state and be vocal about, hey, these are the values I will hire, fire, train, and reward by, then that's when I think you can live up to being called a leader.
Gotcha. When did you put that into place?
We have had company values for probably 5-6 years. But really, it's taken us a long time to implement, to get to a point where we're now, I would say, almost totally living up to that hire, fire, training, and rewarding based off of those values. That was a big shift for us, and it's totally changed how we would normally operate. And I'm so happy we've really committed to that, because it's made quite a big difference.
It sounds like for the best.
Yes.
So without just saying the opposite, what are 2 to 3 attributes that you assign to a bad leader?
Yeah. It sounds kind of silly, but I would say people who don't want to lead. Now, what does that really mean? To me, people who don't want to lead are people who want to control every facet of every project and decision. They want to remove all of the roadblocks for their team members or those that they manage, even ones that should be easily handled by their team. Those are 2 big pieces that don't talk about some other things I'd love to get into, but those 2 things describe people who are, and probably are, incredible managers and incredible producers, right? And that doesn't mean they're bad at their job because they do those 2 things. It's just, to me, that's not someone who wants to be a leader. So a leader is someone who's helping facilitate their team's accountability and helping them be better at their job, and only removing roadblocks that they cannot tackle. And also helping them understand, we call it Bluebird is you're going to tell them what to do, but not how to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Really great leaders, I think, can tell people what to do, but not how to do it and still achieve success. But if you want to micromanage that whole process, you're not doing that. Now, the worst leaders of all is when people's emotions spill out everywhere and whenever things get stressful. And I will say all this, all the things I just described was me as a 25-year-old and 26-year-old and sometimes 27-year-old leader, and sometimes today. So those are the things I try not to do.
The difference between a manager and a leader is being willing to ask the what and not the how. And since you have a personal relationship with this, there is the piece of vulnerability that you have to be comfortable with to not micromanage. Do you have something to say to that?
Yeah. So so one of the things I developed pretty early on was a leadership development course. And quite frankly, while I did it to teach others and help other people and members of our team become more successful in their role, it was frankly, the genesis of it was all of my shortcomings that I worked to learn on. And one of the things that we talk about is how not to micromanage. And the keys to success there is you have to be able to feel, I love how you put the vulnerability, you have to feel comfortable with a couple of things that are kind of really tough. So you got to tell them what to do, but not how to do it. When they ask you questions, you have to work really hard to focus their thought process and their questions back to the process and not the details. Okay, you can't dive into the details of things. Like, how do you take this, what is the exact measurement? What are the calculations versus, hey, think about this process. What are you trying to accomplish? What's the big picture? What are you trying to get to, right? And then you have to set really clear goals for them and expectations. And I think one of the biggest things that's missed is people don't say, I expect that you would take accountability for this process. And once you do that, you shift the conversation and shift the task to now this person owns this thing. And it's their job to take it to completion. We often say as leaders or managers will say, hey, I need you to do this. And the expectation is that they do it, right? We all kind of expect that. But so often we miss that one critical point of saying, hey, I expect you to take responsibility for this. So if you can get past that, that's a tough and a weird conversation to have. And then the next thing is you have to be getting out of their way the second that they start making good progress towards where you think they need to go. So you can't stay there and micromanage. You can't be a part of the process. You have to say, hey, looks like you have this covered. Even if this isn't an email or a text or a call, looks like you got this covered. I expect you to take responsibility of this. If anything goes wrong, come get me. Or if you have any questions, we can work through it together. And then you have to follow up and praise. Not that they got the job done, but the second that they take accountability for the process. So if you can do that, then what you've taught that person is that, hey, I care that you are taking responsibility and accountability for this task. And we together have worked so that I'm not micromanaging you. You're going to be happier. I'm going to be happier. And I've just helped you become a better human person, employee, what have you, and hopefully can achieve greater success in your career now.
Yeah, maybe I should just make that question like the entire podcast, because we could go on and on and on about, okay, if you do that, then it means this, and
Yeah.
We'll have to have a separate conversation. But so Malcolm Gladwell, author of Outliers, believes it takes 10,000 hours to be an expert on something. Are you working on the mastery of anything?
I joked before we started that I have such terrible ADD that I can't sit still long enough to get 10,000 hours of anything. Now, that said, I think when I was kind of reflecting on the areas I spent the most time and invested the most time consistently, it would be that smart personal goal setting has been something I've been doing since 2015 or 2013, actually. So I have this little notebook. It's very beautiful. It's leather bound, has gold edges. And I've made personal, professional, financial, and now family goals every year since 2013. And I guess I'm a nerd, a huge nerd when it comes to this area of my life. and I'm nowhere near mastery, but I love the art of creating personal goals and envisioning a future for a whole year, and trying to hold myself accountable to that. And I think the other thing is just trying to be an inspiring leader. Given that 10,000 hours is not that much over a whole year, I should be an expert at that, I feel like. But I think given how slow I am at learning, it's probably going to take me double that to get anywhere close. But I certainly have been kind of borderline obsessed with the idea of becoming an inspirational leader since I really failed my first year of being a leader when I opened up my first wash. So I love talking about how to be a better leader, how to coach others, and helping other people become their best self, which is actually my why. So my why is to use tools and resources to help people become better versions of themselves. So anytime I'm in that realm, I'm happy. Have I mastered it? No.
Right. 10,000 hours is only 5 years. So if you think about the combination, 16 to now, 25 really being the pivotal, maybe you are pretty close to mastery. And
Maybe I'm getting closer than I think, but I think if I admit it, then it won't live up to our value of humility. So I'll just stay at the edge,
yeah. Which is more valuable to you when thinking about mastery, 10,000 hours or having several years of experience under your belt?
I think, and maybe it's just the contrarian in me, I would say, really neither.
Okay.
Because I think the most valuable thinking for mastery is just the thought of continuous and constant improvement. Not that there is ever a finite thing you meet. So maybe I could be contrarian to myself again and say that just means experience under your belt. But I think as long as you're really focused on, and for us at Bluebird, that's aligns with our value of excellence, which is we define as 1% better than yesterday. I think as long as you're working for that constant and continuous improvement, then I think inevitably that theory of mastery will become more relevant.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. When you hear this quote by John Maxwell, what does it evoke inside of you? Feed your faith and starve your fear.
I would say that my answer to this a week ago would be different than this week. So I love food. And so I love the idea of feeding parts of my life that bring me joy and perpetuate joy. However, I heard this really interesting story, and it was about, so I love to hunt, and I've been training hunting labs since my first lab when I was in 8th grade. And I heard the story about this guy who got this highly trained dog. He worked really hard, got it with an amazing trainer, and was ready to take on his first hunt. And he had seen this dog work in the field with the other trainer. It was perfect for birds and just was amazing. Everything he could have hoped for. He went on his first hunt with it, and they get out of the truck, and the dog goes and climbs underneath the trailer and lays down and wouldn't come out. And so the guy's obviously just spent all this money, and he's super sad. And so he calls the trainer and said, we got out of the truck. The dog just went and laid under this trailer and didn't want to hunt. What happened? And the trainer said, did you feed the dog before you hunted? And the guy says, well, yeah, I wanted him to have a full belly, so he had plenty of energy to hunt. He says, you never feed a hunting dog before they hunt. You need them to be hungry. You want them to be hungry for the birds, and to really be agitated and want more. Mm. So that totally changed my perspective on a concept like this, because I've always felt that you have to, feed the things that make you happy and make you want to pursue and not be scared. But I kind of think that given that context of that story, if you starve your fear, it will always nag at you. So I think the only way to feed your fear is to not feed your fear, is to ensure that you explore it, you understand it, you rationalize it. So in some sense, you feed it by you bring it to light. I know for me, when I bring my fears to light, then they don't really scare me anymore. So previously, I would have answered this to say, hey, focus on the things that make you happy, focus on the things that make you better. But now I'll say that I really do think you have to focus on the things that you're afraid of, bring them to light, air them out, feed them so they go away. And then you can go back to focusing on the things that make you happy, make you better.
That's a great perspective. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
James Clear, author of Atomic Habits, teaches us that the most effective way to change your habits is to focus on not what you want to achieve, but who you want to become. My question to you is, who do you want to become?
This is going to sound sterile, but I really want to optimize who I am right now. I really do love the person I am now, but I do think that there's a really great opportunity for me to chase that 1% better, whether it's how I show up as a father, a husband, a brother, a friend, a community member, a leader. So I don't have this deep sense of desire to achieve this certain thing, which is so my personality. I'm a forward thinker. I want to achieve this one thing, right? But in terms of this, of who I want to become, I want to focus on maintaining my values, living my values as I achieve my various goals. And I hope to continue to find happiness with an undoubtedly rapid changing set of variables, AKA my life.
I'm going to challenge how you prefaced that. You said this may seem sterile, but this is what I believe. What about that? So you said this really inspiring thing of I'm going to get 1% better, but then you prefaced it with sterile. How does that shake out?
That's a great question. I think when I use the word optimize, the word optimize in its essence, I feel just seems very sterile and unemotional when you ask this beautiful question of who do you want to become, So I think outside of that word, I don't think anything I said was sterile, so that's fair.
Yes, it's what's giving you your why, and it's what's driving you, and I think that's beautiful. Yeah.
No, thank you. I appreciate that, and I appreciate that accountability.
Yeah. Thank you, John Michael, for this conversation and for joining on this podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Yes. Each month, Deliberate Directions produces and releases episodes that showcase local Idaho gems, emerging talent, and business and leadership experts. We release these episodes on all major streaming platforms, including Apple Podcast, Spotify, and YouTube. And if you're looking for more of a local, deliberate conversation, Deliberate Directions hosts a monthly book club here in Boise, Idaho. Those conversations inspire the conversations that you've heard here on the podcast today. Thank you for listening, and we hope that you join us for the next Deliberate Leaders Conversation.